I'm Jack Patty, and this is the Senior Minute, successfully serving seniors.
Welcome to another episode of the Senior Minute. Today we have with us the Property Valuation Administrator, Mr. O'Neill. Welcome, Mr. O'Neill.
Well, thanks for having me. Property Valuation Administrator is a mouthful, isn't it?
It is sure a mouthful.
PVA works too. It's called something different in just about every jurisdiction. And here locally it used to be called the Tax Commissioner. I don't know if that would have been better or not, but that's what it was.
Can you tell us a little bit about yourself, please?
Sure. So I've been in office for about 15 years now. Previously, I worked for the Jockey Club in Equibase. I was their Senior Operations Manager, mostly managing large volumes of data, which is surprisingly very similar to the job I have now. The PVA office in our database is the official database for all real estate property in Fayette County, and there's a wealth of data there that we've worked really hard to make available for a lot of different things, not just printing tax bills. So most of it is accessible through our public-facing website, FayettePVA.com. It's a great resource. Every day I get some thumbs up from somebody who loves the website, so if you're not using it, please do.
Okay, thank you. That's great information. So let's get down to the meat of it. How
Okay.
are property taxes calculated, and are there discounts that are available to seniors?
Okay, so the way that we assess residential property is based on comparable sales. So we have the county divided up into about 300 different residential neighborhoods that may or may not correspond with neighborhood association boundaries or subdivision boundaries. What we're looking to do is to clump properties together that are as homogeneous as possible, because it's easier to assess that way. So if you had a neighborhood where every house was exactly the same, that's much easier to assess than a neighborhood where every house is custom built. So that's kind of what we're looking for in these different neighborhoods. So we take sales within those neighborhoods. We try to learn from the sales. What's the price per square foot? You know, what's the price per number of bathrooms, whether it has a basement or not, and then we analyze those sales and then apply it broadly across the entire neighborhood. So what we're doing is called mass assessing. We don't go in every individual house, so it's not like a formal appraisal, but that's why it's so important that the taxpayers participate in the assessment process through the protest process, so that we get a more accurate understanding of the house, usually what the condition is on the inside. Especially for seniors. So what we have found is that the longer you live in a house, perhaps the more dated it is. And for for seniors, those who are on using the Homestead exemption, and we'll talk a little bit more about that in a second, they typically live in their houses longer than the average person. So the average number of years somebody might live in a house countywide is 13 years. It's more like 23 years for those with a homestead exemption. So the further you are away from the last time the house sold is probably an indication that the house might be a little bit more dated than the condition of the houses that we're using for the sales comps. But there's no way for us to know that until we have the conversation with the taxpayer. So I really do encourage people to go through the protest process that's outlined in their assessment notice. It's not just government lip service. We really do mean it. We want it to be an iterative and interactive experience.
Okay. For seniors on fixed incomes, how often would they expect their property to be reassessed and a change in their tax?
Well, fixed income or not, we shoot for reassessing every 4 years. That's what the State Department of Revenue plan is for us to be on a quadrennial review plan. And for the most part, that works pretty well. The last several years, the real estate market has been really hot, and so only reassessing once every 4 years, you know, we've been seeing increases in median sale prices of 10%, 12% per year. So if we're only reassessing once every 4 years, by the time we get back around to you, that could be a 40, 50, or 60% increase in your assessment, and that's a lot to take for anybody, whether you're on a fixed income or not. Yeah. And then there are also other factors at play. For example, very recently we've had the COVID lockdown, and so there was a year or two there where we were not getting out into the field and doing full-blown neighborhood reassessments. So if your neighborhood was up for reassessment during that lockdown period, it may be 6, 7, 8 years between an assessment, because we're just not capable of coming back in and doing 2 entire years in 1 year. We have to kind of pick our spots, and what we've done is look at neighborhoods where where sale prices were really getting away from the assessments and tried to pick up neighborhoods here and there. But there are some neighborhoods that went a long period of time without a reassessment, and we don't like that. It doesn't make it a good experience for anybody.
Okay. Well, thank you.
But for the most part, once every 4 years.
Are there payment plans rather than the lump sum that most of us are experience?
Well, I'm not the best person to talk to about that, and not to evade the question, but my office is not involved in the collection of property taxes in any way. All we do is arrive at the value, then we turn that data over to the county clerk in August of every year, and they print the tax bills, and then once the tax bills are printed, they're given to the sheriff, and the sheriff collects the taxes. Okay. So that's really a better question for the sheriff or the county attorney to answer. What type of payment plans may or may not be available, I don't know.
Okay. What's the easiest way for a senior to appeal tax valuation?
So when you get your assessment notice, which is, we shoot for April 15th of every year. And so here's an important thing to remember. Use the website. On April 15th of every year, we upload the new values for that year. So whether you get the notice in the mail or not, whether or not you were even reassessed that year, you can always count on going to the website, looking up a property, and seeing on there what that year's assessment is. But if you were reassessed and you get the notice from us in the mail around April the 15th, there will be quite a bit of information about how you go through the protest process. Now, one of the benefits of COVID and those restrictions were, it used to be before COVID that the protest process was almost entirely in person, where folks would come into the office and we would sit down and go over it with us. Well, that was no longer possible from 2020 through 2022 or so. So we moved the protest process almost now entirely through forms online. So when you get the notice, or if you want during that formal protest period, which is roughly April 15th through May 20th, not exactly those dates, but pretty close to those dates, you can go on to FayettePVA.com. You will see the links to the form to fill out the protest. And then most of the back and forth is done through phone calls and email. If you're not good with technology and you would rather come in person, we will be more than happy to accommodate that. But most people like the flexibility of being able to do that online.
All right.
In the middle of the night in their pajamas.
Yes, there we go. Yes, thank you. Can you describe the homestead exemptions? Because that seems to target seniors. Or are there other things besides the homestead exemption available to seniors?
Not through the property taxes. So most states have some version of a homestead exemption. In Kentucky, it's if you're 65 years of age or older, then you're entitled to a homestead exemption. It's also available for those who are receiving disability payments from Social Security or some agency like that. So the important thing to remember is the year you turn 65, don't wait for your birthday. Right, so the year you turn 65, go ahead and get the application into us so that we can process it and make sure that it's reflected on your tax bills when that data goes out in August. Otherwise, there's additional paperwork involved and we have to request a refund and all of that. So some people think they have to wait until they actually have the birthday, but you don't. It's the year you turn 65. And the requirement is you had to have owned and occupied the house on January 1. So unfortunately, if you buy a house in February, I can't put the homestead on that house until January of the following year. So one thing that you might want to consider, so if you sell your house in February and buy your new house in March, it's possible that you might be able to get the closing attorney and the mortgage bankers to prorate the taxes a little bit differently to make sure you get the full benefit of the homestead and that the buyer doesn't get any benefit because they're not entitled to it, because they didn't own the house on January 1.
Well, that's great information. Well, thank you, Mr. O'Neill. Lots of great information here. Thank you. And thank you for joining us again for another episode of the Senior Minute.